You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. It's time to answer a question. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want your honest answer. Are you living your life for you, or are you living your life for everyone else? And I want to point out this concept on this show today because I realize that for a long time, I was living my life for what? For everybody else. And for a while, I didn't know that. I thought I was doing my own thing. I thought I was doing what I needed to do. And it took me to step back and evaluate my relationships, my friendships, my attitude, the way I dealt with things. And once I analyzed those things, I realized that I was not living my life for myself. Quite the opposite, actually. I was living my life for every other person but me. When you had the list of things to do, I was last. And I think a lot of us fall into that category. It's not that we're less smart. It's not that we're less attractive. It's not any of that. It's actually quite the opposite. It's a learned response. It's something that we dealt with since childhood. It's something that's almost innately brought into our lives, and we have to actually manually switch it off and begin to live for ourselves. Are you ready to make a life change? And it's not going to be like changing everything and getting rid of stuff. It's going to begin with you. And once you get you, right, everything else comes into place. And oftentimes I feel like it's hard to see the forest through the trees. It's hard to see the puzzle put together because why? Why is it hard to see the puzzle being put together? When we don't know what piece we are in the grand tapestry, in the puzzle, we can't begin to understand what the picture makes. And the only way to figure out what piece we are is to go within ourselves and figure out how we can begin to live our life for ourselves today. And no, it doesn't take overnight. It's not an overnight success. You don't go through the Wendy's drive-thru and all of a sudden, I'm living my life for me. Screw it all. No. It begins today. And it goes through your entire lifetime. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a little scary. It's going to be a little edgy. You know what? But it's going to be really, really cool. And when you get there, you realize that you've been losing a little bit of yourself for a long time. You actually begin to realize that you didn't even really know who you were, much less losing yourself. I know. It's like a new lease on life. It's like going to the spa and having an entire body, brain, heart cleanse and coming out and being like, whoa, I feel like I've never even had a drink of alcohol. I feel so healthy. Seriously. It is an overwhelming feeling of happiness and scared and wow and oh my God and why haven't I done this earlier? Why haven't I done this earlier? Well, the reason why you haven't done it earlier is not because you're over there like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this for myself. I'm going to stay over here. No. The reason why you haven't done it earlier is you didn't even know that you were living for everybody else. You thought this is the way that life is. This is my duty. This is my calling. And that's what you bought into because many of us did. Most of us buy into it. And most of us never see the light of day of what I am talking about. This is a higher level of thinking. This is the 1%. This is exactly how you begin to understand your depth and honesty and truth, your personal truth, and how you begin to understand where you are and what you're doing and what your purpose is and why you were placed on planet Earth to do what. And yes, we have to get out of our comfort zone. And I always think it's interesting because when you hear the word comfort zone, it's actually 2 words, but when you hear that, right, you automatically feel like warm and fuzzy. But comfort zones aren't warm and fuzzy. To me, comfort zones is kind of like sweaty and chafing. It's like sweaty and chafing all at the same time. Constantly being chafed, constantly sweating. And it could be like, really cold night sweats for you or hot night sweats. I don't know which way you go. But that to me is a comfort zone because comfort zones hold us back from who we truly are. They hold us back from really being happy. They hold us back from being really successful. And they hold us back from really feeling good about ourselves. And why do we stay in them? Because we've always been there. Because we watched our family do it. Because our friends do it. Because our spouse does it. Because that's the way we were raised to do it. And that's what we believe. And the reason why this show is called Perspectives is because it's finding that new perspective, that new lease on life, that you can make your life an amazing tapestry. You know what I'm saying? Instead of settling, for the little painting on the paint by numbers, you're a Moët, you're a Renoir. And when you begin to realize the intricacies of who you are, that's when life becomes really fascinating. But you can't get there if you're wearing the same suit or the same dress that you're wearing today and living for everyone else. It's time to change from the inside out. It's time to understand that you have another option. There is another way of life. And you won't die. And you won't go to hell. And you won't lose your life. And you won't lose your friends. And you'll find exactly what you need. And you'll cut to the chase a lot faster than waiting around. I find oftentimes people lose their purpose because they put their purpose in other people and the spouse and their children. And then when that goes away, if there's a divorce or the child moves to college and there's an empty nest or whatever it is, the person begins to feel as though they've lost their purpose. Oftentimes you can feel the same if you've been living your life for everyone else. Because you never really knew why you were here to begin with, because you were caretaking for all those around you. And not that caretaking is a bad thing at all. It strengthens us. But when it takes over your life and you begin to put all of the other people first before yourself, you lose out on who you truly are. And to be honest with you, I don't want to see you lose out on that, because I think that you deserve a life that's wonderful. I think you deserve that life that you've probably thought about, that you've probably daydreamed about, that you probably saw a movie about one time where the man or the woman was living a life that they wanted to live. They were experiencing life and kind of throwing off the shackles of life and just being who they were. No matter what, they were willing to go out of their comfort zone, possibly willing to lose friends, acquaintances, probably willing to even have differences with family and spouses, maybe exploring other occupations, getting other education, allowing your true self to thrive. And I ask you, Now, to begin to recognize in your own personal life, how often do you put yourself last? How often do you have no time to do things for yourself? Like work out? For women out there, maybe getting their nails done. For men out there that have a heavy lifting job or a lot of stress, get a massage. Some of you probably never. And so I want you to begin to recognize that. I also want you to begin to recognize how often do you keep your mouth shut of fear of what other people will think about your honest perspective. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back this time. In 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. I've been talking about how you're living your life, and I've been asking you to think in-depthly about your own life. Are you living your life for you, or are you living your life for everyone else? And right now, I want to begin to point out the specifics that you need to know that will indicate that you are living for everybody else. And later on in the hour, I'm going to give you the information you need and the techniques that you can take and use on your own in your own unique way to make the shift to live for you and to live honestly and direct with your consciousness, with your heart, with how you feel. This is a life changer. It's not a game changer. Why it's not a game changer is that you will no longer be playing the game. You'll no longer be playing the game. There is no game to play. Why play a game with your life? This is a life changer. And it's up to you to make this life change, get rid of the game, and move on with you. So let's begin to talk about this from a perspective of people pleasing. Yes, good old people pleasing. We all have done it. Some of us are still doing it, right? Some of us are still doing it. And where do we get it from? Childhood. And who do we first try to people please? Our parents. And I've talked about this before in other shows about how I tried to show my parents like that I could ride my bike with no hands. Yeah. Trying to impress, trying to please. And as kids, that's what we do. We try to please everybody. But the problem is that as we grow up, we're still trying to please everybody because we never got out of that. And why did we not move past that? Well, because we got what we wanted for the most part. We made other people feel good. And that helped our ego a little bit. But also it seemed to be our duty, our place. It's what we do. And I'm not saying to go out there and anger everybody and piss everybody off and all this. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying you need to take a step back and realize, when am I doing something because I want to do it? When am I doing something because it makes sense to me? When am I doing something because I think it's the right thing and it's the right thing to do? Versus, am I doing that just because this person wants me to? And I'm doing that because they just assume I'm going to do it because I don't want to rock the boat? Because I don't want to upset them? Think about it. And how often have you done something for someone else, probably even in the last couple of days, that you resented? And why did you resent it? You resented it because you didn't want to do it. It wasn't what you wanted to do. Instead, you wanted to do anything but that. Right? And what happened? I want to do everything but that. And what happened? You did it anyway. Oftentimes when we people please, we go out of our way to do something for somebody and we feel dejected. We feel used. And why is that? Because when you're going out of your way to help somebody, you shouldn't feel used. You should feel good that you help them. So why is it that it gives us this bad taste in our mouth? Well, it's because we have to really sit back and ask ourselves, are we doing this because we want to do this? Or are we doing this because we think we have to do this? Want to and have to are two separate concepts altogether. Remember when you were a kid and the last thing you wanted to do was to clean your room? Remember that? The last thing you want to do is clean your room. You're like, why the hell do I have to clean my room? This is a joke. The doggone establishment has gotten out of control here. And I remember the worst time when it came to room cleaning, and I want to share this story with you. I was 7 years old, maybe 6. And my mom came into my room and she said, Ashley, Nicole, Burgess. It's time for you to clean your room. You need to clean your room. But Mom, I don't want to clean my room. I'm playing records. I'm listening to records. I don't want to clean my room. Ashley, I give you 1 hour to clean your room. That's how my mom sounded, right? 1 hour. And I will come back in here and inspect your room. And if it's not clean, we got a problem, missus. We got a problem. And I was like, oh, Lordy. So I closed the door. And I got up and I started trying to clean stuff, right? I had all the determination that I was going to do it. And after about 5 minutes, I stopped. Because I didn't want to have to do anything. I sure the heck didn't want to do it. And so I sat back down on the floor, putting my record on the record player. And I had just gotten the record player. I had just gotten that record player maybe 10 days before. And I'd asked for it for a long time. It was something I asked for a couple years. And I think I got it for my birthday. It was in the summer. It was in June. And I remember I got it on my birthday. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's amazing. And I love that record player. It was red. And it had a top on it. Love that record player. I think you know where the story's going. So an hour went by. And there's a knock on the door. Knock, 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 knock. And I'm like, oh, Lordy. And I kind of forgot because as a kid, I had a lot of attention deficit hyper disorder. So part of me remembered I had to have cleaned the room. And part of me forgot that she ever came around the first time. So I actually had a smile on my face when I opened the door. And she's like, she looked at my smile and she thought, assuming I had cleaned my room, she looked down and she's like, what the heck is this? It's even messier than when I came in last time. You were supposed to clean your room. And I got a little stressed out. You know, as a kid, as much stress as you can get. I don't really know. I probably kind of laughed or whatever. And she went and got those hefty, the big black trash bags. She got a whole box of them. And she came into my room and she's like, you had a chance. And I remember I was like, well, what does she mean by that? And she goes, help me take everything off this floor, including your records and record player, and put them in these bags. And sure enough, I put them in the trash bags with her. And I just kind of lowered the stuff into the bag, assuming that this was just a drill, a test, really. And then she asked me to go take it out to the curb. And I remember taking those bags out to the curb. Yeah, and the trash company came and picked it up, and that was it. And I'm going to tell you, that was the last time when somebody told me to clean my room that I didn't do it. But as adults, we don't have to do it. There's a difference between want to do it and have to do it. And we got to think about that kind of stuff because when we're people pleasing, oftentimes there is no area between want to and have to. It's all in the same bracket. Sadly enough, most of the time when we're people pleasing, we don't want to do it. It's not something we want to do, but we feel like we have to keep that friendship, to keep that relationship, to keep them happy, right? It's all about keeping them happy, to keep them liking us. Because if they like us, then we're okay. But do you like yourself for doing it? Are you happy with yourself for doing it? And I find often that people pleasers, and I was a people pleaser, and I can still fall into that. Okay, I'm not perfect. This isn't preaching. I'm not perfect. However, when I do fall back into that people pleasing kind of situation, I feel kind of lost. Because I'm no longer doing things because of the reason for it. I'm doing it because of the person, because I want them to be happy with me. And that shouldn't even be a determining factor. I agree that if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I've got to do it because that's my word. However, let's rewind back before you said you're going to do it. Think about it. Before you say you're going to do something, really think about, do I want to do this? Do I have the time to do this? Is this something that I want to add into my life? Or am I just doing this because I want them to like me? Because I don't want to rock the boat? Because I want their friendship, or I want their love, or I want their attention? And it's time to really analyze your relationships right now and determine where those relationships are in your life and how you can begin to slow that roll on the people-pleasing activity to gain back your consciousness, your heart, and really put into perspective who you truly are. Go to my website, ashleyburgess.com, Ashley, B-E-R-G-E-S, Ashley, BERGES.com. Check out the latest blogs and check out my latest writings on how you can take back your life and use even confrontation to help you instead of cause harm. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. It's up to you to tell me, are you living your life for you or for everyone else? Right before the break, I was talking about people pleasing and how this is direct correlation to living your life for everyone else. And how we have to begin to analyze when we do something or when we accept a responsibility. Is this because we want to do it or because we want to make the other person happy and like us? There comes a time when we have to disagree. There comes a time when we have to literally step up and say, hey, I love you and I care about you, but I can't do this right now. And I'm sure you might find someone else that can. But the biggest thing is not to feel bad about it. We often feel bad when we can't people please because what? Because people pleasing is part of our makeup. It's part of our cellular definition. It began as when we were born as kids. And this is why this is so important, is we have to put a stop on the people pleasing. We have to put a stop, and that begins the shift in our consciousness to live our true life for ourselves. And there's several ways we can do this, is analyzing why we choose certain things, realizing that we have the ability to say no. But last but not least is to understand that our value as a friend or a family member or a spouse or whatever that looks like, whatever that geography is, us is more valuable than anything we can do for somebody else. And to understand that our value shouldn't be determined based on what we're doing for someone else. It should be based on who we are. And if other people aren't happy, if we say no to them, then that's fine. We have to be able to accept that as well and understand that they have been indoctrinated into the system that everything has to be a yes and everybody has to do it. But you don't, because guess what? When we do things we don't want to do, we resent them. When was the last time you did something you didn't want to do and you resented that person that asked you to do it? And not only did you resent them, you kind of avoided them for a while. Am I right? Oh, yeah. Maybe you didn't call them back a lot. Maybe instead of calling them back when they called you, you sent a simple text, I'm busy. Maybe you just avoid them altogether because you just got tired of it. Just tired of the same thing. And so why do that? Oftentimes when we stop people pleasing too, we can see when people are using us. Isn't that a novel idea? When we stop people pleasing, all of a sudden we realize who are the folks out there who are using us because we're nice people, because we go out of our way, instead of really and truly our friends. Yes, it is an eye-opening experience. It is beyond eye-opening, and when we stop people-pleasing, we quickly understand who is in our corner and who is not. And the greatest thing about that is we can find out earlier than later. The sad thing is that, yes, it hurts us because we want everybody to like us, but you know what? It makes room for other people and relationships in our life, and it's actually quite therapeutic later on down the road because you're able to understand the honest truth about why they were in your life to begin with. You see what I'm saying? And I think oftentimes we come across that for the first time we're not able to do something for a friend, and guess what? We don't hear from them. They're gone. Why are they gone? Because they can't take any more from you. Were they ever your friend? No. So, one of the best things about pulling yourself out of this and shifting your consciousness into living your true life is when we stop people pleasing and we start doing things because of the joy of doing things, it changes the whole dynamic. All of a sudden we can see who's using us, who loves us for us and who loves us for what we do for them, who loves us for how we make them feel about themselves, right? That's another thing too. You know, there's a lot of folks out there that they love you for how you make them feel, but do they give you that back? Or do they just take? And why do you let them just take? Because you want them to like you. Because you don't want to rock the boat. Because of our ego. And what does our ego say? Well, if they don't get it from me, then they'll get it from no one. And I'm their best friend they have, and they don't have anybody. Well, for some of these people, the reason they don't have any other friends is because they treat people like crap. That should be a red flag to you, by the way. Unless somebody lives in a very rural area where there's hardly anybody there and they're a farmer or they raise cattle or whatever, fill in that blank. Unless there's something like that, extenuating circumstances, if somebody's living in a certain area and they don't have an overwhelming sense of stress when it comes to meeting new people, if that's not the case, and they can go into a social situation and they feel good and they're around people and they don't have a lot of friends, they don't have any friends, that's not a good sign. I remember years ago, I used to spend time with this particular person and we're so different. And I remember sometimes my friends would say, why do you hang out with that person? Why? And I'd say, why? I mean, you sound like you don't like them. They're like, we don't like them. They're not a good person. They're using you. Well, they don't have any friends. Well, the reason why they didn't have any friends is because they used everybody else up, and I was the only idiot that kept going back. And why did I keep going back? Because I thought I could change them. I thought in my own ego, by doing what I thought was the right thing to do, I thought, well, you know what? They're going to wake up one day, and I'm going to help them make that change, and then later on they're going to thank me. Well, you know what? None of that happened. And no, they haven't changed. And no, we don't speak anymore. And no, they haven't waken up. And no, they never thanked me. Okay? And I know that sounds crazy, but oftentimes we swaddle in clothing and an egotistical intent. And what I mean by that is to think that I could change them. To think that my love could miraculously open their eyes to the reality of life to the point where they would become this giving and altruistic person, which they had never been in their entire life. And I was going to make that change, even though they had used everybody else up to the point of them running away from them. But I was going to be the change agent. And no, I wasn't. I was not the change agent in their life. I had to be the change agent in my own life, which meant get away, run away, run away. And I ran away. I didn't really run away, but I walked away and I exited stage right. And I'm a lot happier for it. Because I realized that me trying to help them wasn't going to work. And I also realize that when there's a lot of red flags and you see it coming, when we ignore those red flags, we put our own safety and peace of mind on the sidelines. And if you really care about yourself and you care about your mission on this planet, you cannot afford to put your health and wellness and pathway and purpose on the sidelines. You can't do it. It's not right. And so begin to realize when you are people pleasing in your own life and begin to put a stop to it, because that's the first thing that will change your life from living for them to living for you. The second thing that you want to think about is the confrontation factor. I hate to say it for you that do not like confrontation. Confrontation can change your life in the best ways possible. You've never even thought about it. Most of us want to avoid confrontation at all costs because we don't like it. We don't like to argue. We don't like to fight. Oh, God, don't rock the boat. Oh, this is going to be painful. But you know what? Confrontation is key to getting the BS out of your life and doing it in a very quick and determined manner. And I'm not talking about starting a fight, okay? I'm not talking about starting a fight. I'm talking about executing positive, direct confrontation in a situation to get the answers to the questions that you need, to bypass the BS, and to move forward with your life. And I think a lot of folks out there listening right now, you might have a family member or a friend that has really pushed your relationship to the limit. And because of their relationship status with you, maybe they've been a friend for a very long time. Maybe it's a relative, a blood relative, a parent. It's hard to say anything. We want to keep quiet because we just hope and pray that this will go away and that we'll just forget about this. And in no time, it'll be over and everybody's going to be happy singing Kumbaya. But it hasn't happened yet. And I tell you right now at this time, if you are in the right, and you know you are, and you've looked at it from every different perspective, okay? Because you really have to. You've got to voice your opinion. You've got to voice your perspective. And sometimes that might appear confrontational. Because what happens when we don't confront a situation that we need to confront? What happens? We wage a war internally. Yes, we internally hate on ourselves. When was the last time that somebody was telling you something that you totally disagreed with to the heart and core of your being? And instead of saying something, you just went, okay, yeah, that's great. Or you kind of laughed it off, or you stayed quiet and you listened to them rant and rave about something that really went antithetical to every freaking value in your being. And what happened when you left that meeting or that engagement or whatever that was? What happened? You internally beat yourself down because you should have spoken up. You felt bad about it and you beat yourself down. It's a lot like when we fight with somebody and we don't need to fight with somebody, and then later on we feel bad. You know what I mean? Because we feel bad about it. Yeah, it's really antithetical to anything we need to do. And so sometimes you've got to step up to the plate. And even if it means confrontation, you got to do it. Confrontation can be a very good thing. And the reason why I say this is that anytime that I've had real, genuine confrontation that I've allowed to be in a heated situation that needed to be figured out, it quickly got figured out. Now, it didn't mean that I always won, and it didn't mean that they saw and could understand where I was coming from. What it did show me, more than not, is that this is not ever going to work out. Okay? Another thing that it showed me is this is where that person stands. If I'm not willing to deal with that, I need to exit stage right or stage left, whatever you choose. Also, what it showed me is that I could stick up for myself. Okay? And I'm not talking about fighting or fist fighting. I'm talking about sitting there calmly. I don't agree. And the reason why I don't agree is X, Y, and Z. And you're going to be able to see exactly who they are. A good example is, do you have somebody in your life who owes you a lot of money? Do you have someone in your life right now who owes you a lot of money? When I return, I'm going to explain how confrontation can help you either get that money back or move on. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about, are you living your life for yourself or for others and for everyone else? And right before the break, I was talking about the use of confrontation and how it can benefit your life in many, many ways. And right before the break, I was talking and asking straight up question, is there somebody in your life who owes you a large amount of money? Is there somebody in your life who owes you a large amount of money? What have you done about it? Most of us, what we do is we think that the person, especially, they probably told you that they're going to pay you back. And so we wait around for that to happen, right? Has it happened? Probably not. Have you gotten any payments maybe? For most of you? Probably not. So I ask you to begin to realize what confrontation can do by just thinking about this one concept. Somebody owes you a lot of money, told you they were going to pay you back. That's why you loaned the money in the first place, right? And I'll say they were a friend of yours or a family member or coworker or whatever. This is your first way of using confrontation to change your life. And what I mean by this is you need to meet with them, set up a meeting, have a sit-down conversation with them, and just remind them of how much money that they owe you, okay? And how you gave it out of the goodness of your heart and you were hoping that they were going to come through and at least pay you back something. There's probably going to be a confrontation. And oftentimes in this confrontation, they're either going to start paying you back, they're going to try to railroad you and defer you, or they're going to tell you straight up, I had no intent of paying you back. At this time, you are allowed to argue. You're allowed to escalate it. No violence. No violence. You don't want any extra violence. Think about it. It happens, though, because when you are upset and when you've been disrespected like that, you can get very angry. But let me tell you one thing, is the more we harbor our anger about this, the less we can move on. What this confrontation will do for you is 2 things. One, it'll let you know where you stand, okay? And you got to be honest with yourself on where you stand. If they're just telling you stuff to blow smoke up your butt, you probably need to recognize that. But if they tell you that they have no intent of paying you back, which I bet 70% of the people will say, 60%, you can say what you need to say. But at that point, remember, this is time for you to clear the air, have some closure, and with this confrontation, you know what you get out of it? You get to go on and cut them out of your life. Confrontation can be key to moving people out of your life that don't need to be there. There are several of us that have people all in our life that all they do is take up space, take up our mind share, and they don't need to be there any longer. And one of the best ways to get rid of them is a healthy dose of positive confrontation. Positive confrontation is a very interesting thing because what it does is it clears the air. It allows everybody to know where we stand, how we feel, what we need, what we don't need, and we get to find out where other people stand, and we don't just sit around holding that empty bag. Think about it. We're able to move on. We might not be happy with the fact that John or Chris ain't going to return the money. We might not. But what we might be able to understand is that they are no longer in any of your mind share. Because they had told you they were going to do something for you that they never followed up with and maybe never intended to do, meaning that they were fraudulent in their intention, meaning they lied to you, meaning they disrespected you, and it's time for you to accept that and to move on. And once we accept where people stand, we recognize it, realize it, and cut it out of our life. And I know for some of us that's stressful, but for some of us, and for everybody, when you get down to it, once you get past the initial confrontation, we're able to recognize the power and the positive power that has to reinforce positivity and to bring people in our life that need to be there instead of the people that have just been there for a long time. Last but not least, is we have to realize that when we begin to stop people pleasing and we begin to confront people on their promises or their empty promises, that we will indeed need to leave some of these dead-end friendships. And a caveat to these dead-end friendships is one thing that you want to always remember. It's hard to get past certain relationships. It's hard to move past. It's hard to get out of relationships that no longer serve you anymore or help to serve the group anymore. And what I mean by that is when a relationship no longer serves a purpose, when it's time to go on your separate way, when the other person has walked out, don't run after them. Don't run after them. It's a grave disservice when somebody finally leaves you alone, and stops using you and moves on and doesn't call you and doesn't keep up with you. Don't run after them. Allow yourself to be. Because what happens here is you're allowing room and space in your life for new people who will offer you awesome returns that you can do the same. Because remember, oftentimes when we're living our life for other people, we don't think about the qualities of those people. We don't see the downfall. We just try to overcome that, gloss that over, see something else. And it's up to you. Because it's really important to our inner self, our soul, our consciousness, to surround ourselves by those enlightened, by those loving people, by those caring people who actually care about you and you care about them. Why allow your life to be surrounded by the other sort? I mean, because, we get what we give, and if you're giving and giving and giving and not getting anything, that's a losing proposition, and it's time to move on. Last but not least is don't be scared to do your own thing. Don't be scared to go your own way, to go by your own path, to go with your own drummer. It's up to you to create this life. It's all about you. And I'm telling you, when you step up to the plate and you live with and by your consciousness, you live a life worth living. And people who are doing the same thing will find you. You'll not be alone. There will be times that you will feel alone. And that's okay. But some of the most amazing things that we've ever done is on our own. It's just us. And in that process, we learn who we truly, truly are. It's up to you to stand up for yourself. It's up to you to live your life for you. You have this one, and it's up to you. Nobody's going to apologize to you later if you feel as though you lost out on this lifetime. Live your true life. Check out the website and Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back this time in 3 shakes.